Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up With Steph. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see I have a new background here. I just moved into a new house. I've got my own office finally. In my old setup, I was in a really small apartment and I was just had to set everything up every time I wanted to film. I was on my couch in my living room. Now everything is in an office. It's nice and tucked away and set up. So, anyway, I'm just really happy to be here. But this is my first podcast from my new house. And I wanted to do an episode on speaking. I speak a lot, as some of you may know, and I get a lot of questions as far as people wanting to speak, how to break into the industry, any tips that I have for them. And while I do have tips that I share with people that have worked for me, I wanted to have an expert on here that knows a bit more about speaking and really coaching people on how to become a speaker. Today, I'm interviewing Jasmin Haley. She is a dental hygienist and she has built a business speaking and helping others who want to become speakers as well. So today I just pick her brain on what people should do if they're thinking about speaking, topics they should pick, tips for new speakers, also tips for not just new speakers, but people like me who have been doing this a while. Sometimes we will have difficult situations happen during speaking events, which can be kind of awkward. Maybe aggressive questions, aggressive behavior, people just being loud. And it's really hard to handle that when you're trying to deliver a presentation and make sure everyone's getting the most out of that lecture. She's also got tips on how to manage your nerves. I've been doing this a while, so I don't get nervous per se that much anymore. But I remember at the beginning, nerves were a big thing. And I mean, I guess every now and then, depending on the crowd that I'm speaking to, sometimes I will get a little nervy now that I think about it. And she's got some great tips on how we can just really self-soothe ourselves before we get out on stage. I hear from people too that they'll reach out and be like, I want to speak, but I'm just a hygienist or I'm just a dentist. And Jasmin has some very strong words for when we talk to ourselves that way, because whether we know it or not, when we're dealing with patients, educating them, talking to them, we are public speaking in a way and we are educating our patients. And so it's like we already have the skills, we just need to use them in a different way. And speaking can be not only a good creative outlet and a way to spread information, but it can actually be very lucrative too if you're doing it the right way. I'm really excited to have had this conversation with Jasmin today, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up With Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hello, Jasmin. You are such a busy woman, so I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to get to know you and have this chat today.
Well, me too. And I've watched what you post on social media. I've snuck around on your website, and I love the content that you put out. It's so real and honest and relatable. So I'm excited to learn more about you. I guess first off, how did you become a speaker? And I also want to hear about your very first speaking gig, like how you got that and how that went.
So I stumbled upon professionally speaking. I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a speaker. Like, it was never like that at all. I had the opportunity to volunteer with a professional association and started meeting speakers and started seeing good ones and ones that were, need a little bit more fine tuning. And I had the opportunity to talk with some of them to see what they would get in Piz-Aid. Okay. And I said, my gosh, my word, this is pretty neat. This is awesome. But I didn't really think it was an option for me until I wanted to have a deeper impact on the profession. And I knew I had something to share and say. And so I actually pitched my first speaking opportunity in 2015. It was a yes. So I did that and I loved it. I actually loved it. I didn't decide to make it a business until I actually met an entrepreneur where I was talking about being burnt out in education and being sick and just feeling like, what am I going to do? I am not doing well. I need to get out of where I'm at. I don't know where I'm going to go. And this RDH was like, why don't you start a business? And I'm like, a business? dental hygienists can actually start a business. And I said to myself, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, oh, I'm an educator. I'm also a speaker. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to speak. Shout out to Elijah Desmond for giving me that little bit of a bud of saying entrepreneurship was an option for me. And I decided to use speaking and training as a way for me to be able to start my business. And that was in 2016.
So, what was that first topic that you spoke on?
It was on diversity, and specifically with working with patients who are different from what we're used to working with. So I talked a lot about what diversity looked like and what it looked like for working with trans patients. That was all new, very, very new to me. And because I was in public health, I also knew that there was gaps in the public health realm of what we were doing clinically and then what was being taught in the school. So as an educator, we talk about cultural competency, which is an outdated term. They need to throw it away, pump it into the trash. It is not a term that makes sense to what we're actually doing when we're talking with folks. Where there is no competency that we have to pass when it comes to learning about cultures. So it
Okay.
is cultural sensitivity, cultural responsiveness. So I knew that there was a gap in what was being taught with me as an educator, what I needed to teach for them to be able to pass their boards versus what was real life. And I wanted to have the opportunity to share that information. And so that's what I did. I pitched it. I didn't have not one slide deck made. I had nothing made, y'all. Zero. I just knew the concept. I knew why the information was important. And I knew from my own personal experiences that the audience would be able to benefit from it.
So, if someone is thinking about starting to speak but doesn't know where to start, what are some first steps that you recommend for them?
Well, first of all, I want to just say for every listener that feels like, oh, I'm just starting. This is like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Like, I need y'all to pump the brakes and understand that your dental hygiene degree has made you and has provided you exactly what you need. I need you to tap back into when you were in public health, all the oral health education programs that you were required to make, all of that foundational information that was used to construct a learning educational program is what you can do to create a continuing education course. You have what you need. You just need to get out of this blockage, just thinking that you're not completely prepared for it. I would say that whatever topic you decide to do, make sure that you're passionate about it. I want to encourage you to choose something that you're passionate about, because before I pitched, actually a little time after it, when I was trying to figure out like what and how did I want my brand, how do I want to be known specifically in dentistry, I was doing some topics that were filling a gap or educating a gap specifically in dentistry, but it wasn't completely where my heart was. And you can tell. Like, I just was like, all right, I'm just going to relay this information, yada, yada, yada. And it was not clicking for other folks. Like, it wasn't clicking for me, and it wasn't clicking for the other folks on the other end that were considering hiring me. So literally, I took time to just pause. Sometimes we need to pause, and then we also need to just create some white space where you sit down and you just reflect about your professional journey. And my professional journey, when I finished my associate's degree, was working in public health and servicing specifically persons living with HIV and dealing with substance use disorder. And that's special and it's unique.
Hmm.
And I absolutely love doing that work. I have a story behind that. Choose what you love, and don't worry about if there's other speakers already speaking on that topic, because there's only one you. There's only one Jasmin Haley, boo boo. Okay? There's only one Jasmin Haley in dentistry. And so the way that I deliver my topic will be based on my lens, my cultural background, my experiences, what I have seen with my patients. And there's other people that speak about diversity and speak about opioid addiction, but none of them do it like me. I walk in confidently knowing that, and knowing that I'm going to deliver an incredible experience, and each of us can do the same. So be open to the refinement that you'll need to make as you're using your content. Every time you deliver it, you're refining it a little bit better. Be open to the feedback that you do get. Remember, audience members, to be constructive with your feedback as well, because I wrote an article about challenging some bullying happening in the attendees that tend to go a little too crazy. They had a little bit too much coffee that day, maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know. But we want to be mindful that constructive feedback is necessary for us as speakers to just refine our presentations. You're going to mess up. You're going to forget some things. The audience will never know unless you tell them.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, don't make it obvious that you just made a mistake because they have no idea. What are some misconceptions that people have about speaking?
For those looking to speak, a misconception is they think that speakers are rolling in the dough.
Yeah.
Pump your brakes, y'all.
I'm not. Are you, Jasmine?
No, okay? Absolutely not. Just like educators who are in academia, we do it because we love making an impact and we love educating and we love seeing that light bulb moment happen. There's also a misconception that folks, when they get into speaking, they think it's, oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the amount of hours to prep, practice, right? The
Hmm.
research that goes into, like, they don't understand that. The level of change that has to happen in your personal life to even make time to be able to do it, for anyone that are caregivers or married or all of those things. So I think there's not enough prep for that. And then the final point that I would say is that speakers and thought leaders, there's a misconception that what you have to share is invaluable, and so therefore you don't do enough to protect it. And I say that to say we are very compassionate and very passionate provider. We want to make a difference, but oftentimes we don't place enough value on our creativity, our brilliance, and then we kind of give things away, which then impacts our ability to really build wealth if we desire to build wealth, or just even revenue that's sustainable in a business because we feel like what we have to offer is invaluable, and then we don't come into rooms negotiating defensively what it is that we have to share.
When you're talking about valuing ourselves, are you talking about like intellectual property? Is that
Hmm.
kind of what you're referring to? Okay. And that
Hmm.
took me a while to recognize that while I'm up there giving a presentation, like, no, I'm not selling you like a thing that you're buying from me, but I am freely giving you my ideas, my original ideas. And I didn't protect that probably for the first year or so. And then I was like, okay, wait, hang on. Like, I really need to protect this. So I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
tricky.
absolutely.
It's such a gray area because it
Yeah,
isn't a tangible thing, but it's like our
yeah.
knowledge and our ideas, those are worth something.
And every other industry outside of healthcare, in my opinion, realizes it's intellectual capital
Yeah.
is the way that I like to phrase it. They understand that. I mean, there's a reason why you have people like Oprah who does a interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on her own production through her own dime, and then she decides to allow someone else to replay it on their channel, CBS,
Hmm.
ABC, whatever, right? Well, they have to pay her well, compensate her well for her
Yeah.
intellectual property. She created it, right? And you can't use it without paying her, and you don't own
Yeah.
it either. That's the part that I feel like for us as speakers, why it leaves many of us thinking like, oh, how can I keep doing the work that I do? There needs to be a realization of that part of what we can contribute and just understanding what it is that we're signing before we start collaborating with larger organizations.
Oh, yeah. Read those contracts. Like, I am a stickler now. Like, I read every single line because there can be some, not that people are doing it on purpose, but there can be some things in there that are just kind of slipped in. And all of a sudden, if you sign it, you're signing your rights away to that recording or those slides or whatever it is. It's kind of scary.
And this is a
Yeah, it is
business.
a business.
I want you to
Yeah.
understand that even though you're speaking, even if you're sharing it for the first time, you are entering into a business. And we have to get our feelings away from it and understand that the corporations that we work with and collaborate and partner with, they aren't all bad, right? They are
Mhm.
just looking out for the interests of their corporation and their business. And of course, we need to do the same. That's all.
Yeah. No, I think it's true. And I think that that translates also to social media content. I have had the experience multiple times where people literally download my video and repost it on their page with no permission, no compensation, and that's not okay. And it's the
Mhm.
same with speaking. I wanted to go back to a misconception that you mentioned that people think we're rolling in the dough, right? And
Mhm.
it's like people could see maybe a dollar amount as far as like what we made for this one presentation, and they think that that's a lot of money, and in some cases it is.
Mhm.
But there's so many, like what you said, so many hours of prep and the time away from your family, getting on a plane, like traveling's hard, it takes a lot of work, you know. So if I were to divide like my honorarium by actually how much time it took, it's, I'm sure, way less than what people would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Can it be a wonderful additional source of income? Can you utilize speaking where it may not be a big payout on the front end, but maybe you have a back end offer where you're doing consulting work? Like there are ways that you can make up for the lower end of payment that
Mhm.
we may receive on in the front end. But we also do have to be mindful of understanding that anyone that's interested in speaking, you need to understand if we desire to use it for the long term, what's the business model that we're going to use so that it makes financial sense? Because there was a long time where I was not equipped to understand how to use it, and I lost out on hours, I lost out on money. I had to hire and pay and invest in five-figure business coaches to be able to get a grip of like, why do I feel so tired? You know, how can I make better use of my time and in the model that I'm choosing so that I can still make a difference and make an impact, but also not put strain on my family financially.
What I'm hearing you say is you have learned from your own mistakes, and this is probably something that you help people with in your business. I'm the same way with ergonomics. I feel like I've made all of the mistakes, and now it's like I'm almost teaching my previous self.
Hmm.
So is that something you do with your business, is helping speakers kind of just not make some of these mistakes and get started on the right track?
So for, I would say about 4 years, I dedicated my business to coaching individuals as it relates to speaking, helping them be able to build a business, build the funnels, build the offers, reach out to find more of the opportunities. Yes, I was dedicated to that. But now in 2025, I've actually pivoted and my focus is more so on leadership development and working with larger organizations like hospitals to be able to educate them on a lot of the frameworks that I've created from coaching individuals.
Okay.
So I think this is a good seed for those that are listening, that what we may start off with in our business, we're actually creating frameworks and steps and unique processes, a way in which we may do things that we can expound on to build out for whatever we desire. So I've taken my years as a speaker, then as someone that was coaching speakers and working with others to now even expand my work into curriculum design and leadership development for larger organizations. And it feels great. So, do I help individuals? Yes, I got to really, really like you. We got a gel vibe. Okay. I'll give you an option. You can even go to my site and find out like a one on one option, a quick option. But I no longer provide any long term group coaching because I have my eyes set on a level of freedom I desire in my business that's not dependent upon small business owners. When you work with larger corporations, there is more sustainability,
Okay. I
and
get it.
it's not as fickle that you
Hmm.
have to deal with when you work with individuals. The life that I desire to have with my family is one where I don't have to be all over the internet. I don't need to be all in every single conference taking my pictures with my millennial, fingers, right? I don't need to do that. I'm going to be quietly working behind the scenes and making connections with folks and living a life of peace that's really important for me. And so for anyone that's listening, it's like You can utilize speaking whatever way you want. Speaking could be through the vehicle of podcasting, like Stephanie's doing right now. And you can make revenue with that. Speaking can be you being on stage doing continuing education. Speaking can look like, oh my gosh, there's so many different ones. You could be a corporate trainer. Like, it doesn't have to be one lane only. You just got to figure out what works for you in your life and what's important for you. And me being a wife and a mom comes first.
I love that one. I mean, you're a dental hygienist, and most of us, when we went to school, at least, okay, I don't want to talk for all of us. I'll just talk for myself. But when I went to school, I thought I was going to be clinical hygiene 4 or 5 days a week till I retired at age whatever. But I just think it's so cool that we have these experiences in life that just like ignite this light bulb in our brain, and we become business owners, we become speakers, we become entrepreneurs, something that we never thought we could. So I always get fired up when whenever I see someone doing what they want to do, like what you're doing, and you've created or you're creating your business around your life and what you want
Mm-hmm.
that to look like instead of the other way around. I'm the same as you. I don't want to be on the road every week. I've done that, and it doesn't interest me. And so now it's like when I do go on the road, I make sure that it's either very profitable for me, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be getting some kind of benefit on the back end. But we have to decide what's important to us in our life and just kind of create our business around that.
Yeah, but acknowledge that we may be dealing with a period of grief when things don't work out the way that you desire. I know I felt that way. And I feel also in my business, I could have been a lot further if I didn't have some of the responsibilities that I have as a
Hmm.
mom and as a wife. And being okay with understanding that that sacrifice is going to be worth it. So who knows, like 5 to 10 years from now, what it's going to look like once my kids are fully grown and I don't have to worry about so much of, helping them navigate life. I'm so grateful because they're wonderful, they're beautiful individuals. However, there is a period of feeling, especially if you have a type A personality like me, where I tend to be a little bit intense. We set things on our plan and you want to check off each box. And it doesn't work out that way. And we have to be okay with that. And we have to be okay with evolving and pivoting. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But it did feel a measure of sadness and feeling
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
am I missing out? Am I gonna miss out if I close this coaching program? Because I had a group coaching program. I just did my last event in person for folks. I don't want to take the financial risk anymore. I'd rather a bigger corporation pay me to do the teaching that I've already been doing.
And it's like looking back, it's almost like what you've done up until this point has been training you to work with these bigger corporations. And even though
Exactly.
that's not something you planned on, like you were kind of prepping for that. It's just cool how it works out that way.
Yeah, and I also think like this conversation is valuable because sometimes we say, well, I'm just a hygienist. My
Hmm.
degrees, y'all, are the same degrees that y'all got. However, I'm willing to say yes to volunteer my time. I'm willing to say yes to certain experiences. And I have utilized what I have done in dentistry to build a business outside of dentistry with the same skills y'all have access to. It's all about positioning and also understanding that we're all worthy of being in rooms where we're making decisions, where we're making an impact. We have to stop minimizing our brilliance, what makes us special. I hope y'all hear that for real.
No, I love that you're saying that. And I hear that a lot too. People will reach out and be like, I want to start on social media, or I want to start speaking, but I'm just a hygienist. And I'm like, first off, don't say just. And with hygiene, like whether we think about it this way or not, we are being public speakers and educating with our patients every single day. So we
Yep.
have the skills. It's just using them in a different way.
Yeah, the vehicle changes. That's it. You're
Yeah.
just changing the vehicle. We're all educators, every single one of us. How we educate in a one-to-one fashion is different from a one-to-many, absolutely.
Hmm.
And sometimes you may need assistance from someone that's been doing it for a while for you to be able to get it to click. But Be okay with understanding that maybe your first couple of ones aren't going to be that good. And even if you've been doing it for several years, I'm not 100% every time I show up. I try my best. I really do try my best. But we all fall short. The difference between myself and you is that I'm willing to keep going forward, and I'm willing to still put myself out there and not quit.
Yeah. And I think too, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and we were talking about some of those comments on the feedback, right? That
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
get. A lot
Mhm.
of them are constructive, which I appreciate. Some of them are not.
Mhm.
And so we were talking about that. And it's like, it's interesting because as a hygienist, I'm in the operatory doing my job. I don't have someone watching me doing what I'm doing and pointing out all of my mistakes, right? But
Mhm.
when you get on stage and you're a speaker, you're putting yourself out there in front of hundreds of people and they're watching you do your job. And yeah, they could potentially see you lose your train of thought or like say a word wrong or something, and they'll call you out on it. And that's where the difference is.
We all have to come to terms with like what is our why, like Simon Sinek, who has a wonderful book called Start With Why. We have to tap into that. For me, it was the loss of my mom and understanding the legacy that I was creating now and that my little girls were watching me. That was my push, because at that time when I first started, I didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And it's with therapy and with taking time to get to know myself that I finally have come to terms that I'm doing it because I love it and that I am worthy of sharing my voice. So, depending on where you are in what lane, whether you're doing it for others or doing it for yourself, you need to tap into that, because, yes, there will be people who will question you. And there are people who are probably saying, who does she think she is? Or who does he think he is? Or they probably really don't care. They're probably not even thinking about you. They're thinking about their next meal, where they're going to go hang out,
Yeah.
all of the things, right? So that could be the other end. They probably not even think about you. So go out there and
Yeah.
share what it is that you want to share and have a great time at that. Stop being your worst critic. I would say though, the hardest part though of my own speaking journey, and I'm going to tap back into that article that I wrote, is the constructive feedback that becomes hostile in the speaking environment, and they're out loud, like while you're talking. Like that's
Yeah.
different.
It
That's
hits
different than
different.
feedback. I don't care about what you say on the feedback. I
Yeah.
do care. I mean, I'll read it, y'all, to some degree. To some degree. But I have just heard a lot of feedback since writing that article for RDH, and hearing other speakers kind of share their story about what they've experienced. I've witnessed it as well. That takes a lot of mental fortitude to push through, but also knowing that unless we address it head on, it'll continue.
Being on stage, I don't know if this is still true, but I know public speaking is one of at least the top five fears that people have, if not number one. So,
Yeah.
what tips do you have for someone overcoming stage fright?
Number one, I think understanding the biology of what's happening in your body. If we understand that our hypothalamus, the amygdala, that it's responsible for fear, and our body is saying that public speaking is something that we have to fear, then what it does is that signals the body that we need to be in the fight and flight response.
Mhm.
So the sweaty palms, the sweaty armpits, the heart racing, like all of that is the sympathetic nervous system happening. And it's unconscious. Within minutes, seconds, someone says, "Hey, Stephanie, we need you to get up here and, and talk about whatever," right? And then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, okay, okay." You may even forget what it is that you want to say, because that fear is impacting the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Okay? So we need to first understand that there's things that are happening within milliseconds to your body that you don't have control over. That's number one. So that makes you approach yourself with a little bit more grace. The second thing is that there are ways in which we can regulate ourselves. Why? Because we have something called the rest and digest system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So that means that instead of pumping the gas pedal, we can pump the brakes. How do we do that? We need to be able to activate that. We can do that by breathing. Okay? There are things such as pausing. Some of us are so used to vomiting out words. How about you stop for a second, take in a deep breath, and breathe? Be awkward with your pause. I know I have done that. And so visualization, meditation, words of affirmation, like we need to start tapping into, even the breathing will help to activate the rest and digest system that we need in order to slow the heart rate down, to be able to speak more calmly. But then we also need to remember this final part here, is that the confidence with speaking will not come unless you continue to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. So when I first started speaking, and I didn't mention this, I printed off every slide. I was crazy. I printed off every slide with the notes underneath them, put them in a binder, had the nerve to have it on the podium before I was speaking.
Yeah.
And this hygienist came up to me and she was like, I know you're not going to read that. I said, if you don't get up out of here. She was very, very straightforward. I'm like, get up out of here, okay? Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. I needed that as my crutch.
It's like your security
compared to
blanket.
exactly compared to like where I'm at right now when I do share and when I do speak, but I had to start somewhere. So just be mindful. I mean, there's other tools and stuff like that that I have, but this is all I can say right now really quickly on a podcast. Start with that. You need to start practicing. So I would practice my speech. I would record it. I would listen to myself. Some of us have problem listening to ourselves. You need to get over that. You can practice in front of some of your friends. Like, know that in and out, because technology often will not work. You won't have your slides. You won't have everything you need. Can you give this presentation and just give it from the heart? Share those talking points. So I would say those are some of the things, is learning how to start regulating yourself. We all know our triggers. It may be speaking in front of individuals. It may be difficult conversations. Practicing the breathing, starting to slow us down, getting ourselves regulated. And then we must practice before we speak. The more we practice, the more that we hear ourselves make the adjustments, the more that we are raising our hand and volunteering or even getting paid to go out there and speak. With practice comes more confidence, and then that confidence will allow you to be more effective when you're speaking.
Yeah, I think the practicing is huge. When I first started, I would set up my phone and videotape myself giving the presentation without the notes on my slides. I saw the slide, but not the note. I just wanted to make sure I knew it inside and out. And I remember one event, I decided to change up my intro, to do a whole new intro like the day before, which I don't recommend that. But I filmed it and listened to it on the plane because I was flying somewhere, and I just listened to it over and over and over. And just, it's like the more you practice, like what you were saying, you will be prepared for those audio issues or those tech issues that are going to happen, these difficult
Yep.
questions that people are going to ask. But if you know your material, at least you know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do the same thing. Even now, I still listen to myself.
Yeah.
And if you have like a signature talk, you will know the meat of it. The beginning of your talk may change. So sometimes now I have the content and I know the content, but I'm changing the story that I use to open up the presentation. So that may be the only part that I record now, and I'm listening to it
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Yeah, because that's part of how we learn, is like the
hmm
auditory system, right? Like we're learning things as we're listening. And then sub question, how can we handle those situations on stage where someone is being aggressive or someone asks a question and then they just start talking for like minutes on end? Like, how do we handle that?
So now that you're listening to this podcast and you know folks can do that, go ahead and preface when you open up, preface the opportunity for people to share that it's in 30 seconds or less, or 60 seconds or
Okay.
less. We have to set like a boundary. So just like if we were setting a boundary with a child or even an adult, it's within this time frame. This is my expectation. So I would say go ahead and start doing that, making that a practice now. I would also recommend that when you have the opportunity for people to share, that you never give them the mic. Never, ever give them the mic. If you
Okay.
are walking up, I like to walk up to folks and I actually like to hold the mic for them to be able to share. And then
Hmm.
if necessary, I can pull it away and say, okay, thank you so much for sharing. We do have to move forward with the rest of the presentation today, but hold that thought. And when we have the opportunity to kind of break off into our topic, you'll be able to share a little bit more with your group. So that's in the instance if I know if I'm going to be breaking up and using that. But there are times, though, when folks are, the way that they question or even in the comment, that they're trying to stir up certain things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've experienced that at all, Stephanie. It can be challenging. So the first thing that we have to consider as speakers is like, how are we going to de-escalate this? What can we possibly say? In the case where someone may be stating something that happened today while I was teaching, they stated something that was very controversial, and I knew that if we addressed it, I would lose the audience or my
Mm.
students in the conversation. And so in that particular case with that comment, I said, thank you so much for being vulnerable and for sharing that. We won't be able to address that because we don't have enough time to cover that information. However, after my presentation or after the class, come and see me. I would love to hear more about it, or maybe we can exchange some ideas on how to handle that. So there are some instances where you may have it where someone may be bringing something up that we know can hijack. So we have to be bold enough, and we have to have enough leadership to know when we need to redirect the conversation.
Yeah.
However, there may be some folks who are saying things and they're not sincere in what they're asking. Sometimes you have to walk up to those folks in the room, and you may have to, this doesn't work for virtual though, y'all, what I'm stating.
Yeah.
This is like if we're in person. Sometimes you got to walk up to them if you know that they maybe are, I don't know if you've had anyone kind of talking loud and disruptively
Oh,
in
yeah.
your class.
I've had tables
But
that
like
are just
actually,
having a great time there in the back,
mm,
and I'm just like, I can't compete with you guys, you know?
yeah, yeah. I walked my room. I actually walk my
Okay.
room a lot. But there are instances when someone may be saying certain things out loud. I was taught from another speaker, her name is Edie Gibson, that in cases where you have folks like that, you need to walk up to them, you need to point, not point like this, but actually make sure that they understand that you're addressing them. You can say certain things like, I know that you have a specific concern about that. How about we speak after? Okay. And as you can see, when I'm shaking my head yes. You want them to be able to shake their head yes beforehand. Because a lot of
Okay.
times when people are hostile in your classroom or in the room, they won't stop unless you actually acknowledge them.
Mm.
There are times though where you may need to ask someone to leave because they won't stop.
Have you done that before?
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I
And
haven't
there,
I haven't
there's
had to do that yet.
Yeah, and there have been times where I didn't. There was another time where I actually did not know, or I couldn't hear them because of the ambient noise for me in my presentation, where they were loud, and someone in the audience asked someone from the event organizers to remove someone because they
Oh,
were
okay.
belligerent. Yes, it's happened on more than one occasion, and that has a lot to do with the topics I speak on. So
Mm.
it may not happen
Okay.
when we're talking about periodontal disease. It may not happen when we're talking about ergonomics. But because of the topics I speak on, they can be difficult. Also, as I mentioned in the article I wrote, sometimes it can also be the package, because I'm a chocolate woman. The package of where it's coming from may not be something that's palatable for someone who's
Mm.
listening. They
And you
can't
have
get the
no
message
control
that
over
way.
that.
No, I don't. I don't. But that's a reality of what we can face. So addressing it is important, but I think, one of the things that I talk about is that we need to talk with the organizers more. Like, hey, if this happens, who do I go to? Even stating a script in the beginning that certain behaviors would not out loud behaviors. We're talking people who are disrupting the learning environment. Here are the behaviors that we won't tolerate, and may ask you to be excused. Having that conversation with the event organizers and actually stating something before you actually speak, I think is a great way to make some changes here in dentistry.
I'm actually going to do that, what you just said, because I
Hmm.
do like state association meetings, which are great. I also do
Hmm.
study club evening events where there's open
Hmm.
bars. It's fun, but also sometimes it turns into a party for people. And there's people that
Hmm.
came there to learn. They didn't come there to party, and I've just had some events that I know could have been better, but they weren't because of this table in the back, just like having a good time. So I think now when I have those type of events, I'll just give the meeting planner a heads up and just be like, I won't tolerate this. If that
Yeah.
happens, please ask them to leave type of thing.
Yeah. Is it okay for me to read what I wrote, what could be introduced
Yeah. Is that from
before
your
presenting?
article?
Yes,
I'm
yes.
going to link that in the show notes, but yes, please.
Okay, so there are ways in which you can de-escalate. Okay, so there's a couple of things. Setting the boundaries is what we just talked about. Also making sure that we respond respectfully to them. We always want as speakers to thank them for their feedback, but also one of the things that I've learned after going over some of the information is a lot of times I'm already addressing the negative feedback that I know I'm going to hear in my presentation. So it's already been said. So be mindful as a speaker as you're thinking about things that are kind of showing up either in the feedback that you're getting or what people are saying in the room, that you address it first, because that kind of takes the power away from them from trolling you in your presentation. But what someone could actually state, and again, we are not legal professionals, we're not HR representatives, nor do we play one on TV. However, I give you a sample statement that event organizers can state at the beginning of your presentation, and it goes like this. Welcome, and thank you for attending today's session. We are committed to providing a positive and respectful learning environment. Please note that any disruptive behavior, including heckling or personal attacks, will not be tolerated. Our speakers are here to provide valuable insights and knowledge, and we ask that you engage with them constructively. If any disruptive behavior is observed, we will ask that the person be escorted out of the session. These measures are in place to ensure that everyone can enjoy the full benefit of the presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to one of our event staff members. So again, it needs to be a collaborative relationship between the event organizers and the speaker, and understanding that there are times to address, there are times to dismiss people and let them know that you'll speak to them after. We just have to be cognizant of how it's impacting the audience, because sometimes we let folks go on and on and on, and it's like people start checking their phone, they start checking their laundry list. Remember, you are the responsible leader of this environment and the direction of where the conversation is going.
No, I think that's great. And I will link that article in the show notes so people can look at that. So we've talked about like just some things that happen on stage for someone who's up there, but I kind of want to go back to before people even get that first gig. What are some things that people need to do to land their first presentation? Like, do you recommend doing things for free at first and then transitioning to paid? Or what tips do you have for them?
Currently, we have enough people in that network now that we could potentially pitch. So you have associations, you have people who have the study clubs, and so these are individuals within your network or vicinity that you can actually go and just say, hey, introduce yourselves and share what it is that you want to share. Be mindful, though, that for some of the larger organizations that have hundreds, maybe dozens of people who are attending, a lot of times they are a business, obviously, right? And they're thinking about who can we hire that's going to draw in the most people that are going to register so we can recoup our money. So if they tell you no at first, don't take that as an absolute no. Take that as, let me go ahead and refine myself some more and make my brand undeniable, so that when they start seeing me popping on these internet streets, they're going to be like, oh, let me go ahead and hire Stephanie, right? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I had my first opportunity. I wind up going to a kind of like a thought leadership. It was like a one and done thought leadership workshop. Did that, wind up speaking again, and then pitch myself to 50 organizations, and only one of them responded to me, and they told me, thanks so much for sending us this information, and no, unfortunately, we're not in a position to hire you. And they only replied to me because they personally knew me. Everyone else,
Mm.
I was ghosted, right? So I didn't wait for permission. I actually started hosting my own events and sold out 2 conferences and started my podcast, started getting visible, and that was when people started to pay attention. So just be mindful that sometimes you do have to grow a brand. Now, I can't tell you whether or not to do it for free. I'm not going to do that because I ain't going to have nobody up here suing me because you can't pay your light bill, okay? But I would say that there is no harm in speaking for free. I don't think there's any harm in that. Just be mindful of why are you doing it. And if you do speak for free, leverage it. Make sure you're getting some pictures. Make sure if they're
Mm.
taking pictures or video, you grab some of that. If you've got a business on the side, make sure you ask for a vendor table. Like there's ways in which you can leverage those opportunities that may be paying you less than you desire. And just know that I'm going to maximize. There's never a room that I'm in that I'm not going to maximize this for the long-term goals that I have. So I would
So
say
it's not
that.
all about money. Like there's other benefits that we can get from speaking too.
Of course, but you also don't want to volunteer forever because then you're not going to make any revenue. You have a hobby, right? And so you are the only one that can gauge how many volunteer opportunities you can get or that you will take. There are plenty of people, and again, this is industry specific. This is for dentistry. It's not like that everywhere else that you may
Okay.
go. Every industry is completely different, but you will hear of people like Mel Robbins who have spoke about, I love her, she wrote the book Let Them and the 5 Second Rule. She's talked about how at the very beginning of her building her brand and her voice, she was speaking a lot, right? But at some point in time, it wasn't profitable for her. She wasn't able to take care of her family's needs. So we need to be mindful of being strategic in choosing where we're going to show up and share our voice and not be at every single place because we're feeling like, oh my gosh, this is my only opportunity. We just want to be mindful of like, if you say yes to this gig to speak for Stephanie, how is this leading to the overarching plan that you have for your business and for your goals? And understand that you are a brand, my friend. So every place that you show up, you can maximize for the long-term goals that you may have for your business or, your speaking.
When I first started, I did do things for free. I did some webinars for free. I mean, those that I feel like that was pretty like low hanging fruit. And
Yeah.
I did it for free because I needed to like build my chops. I needed to get practice. I needed that
Yeah.
repetition. But once
Yeah.
I started getting people reaching out to me, asking me to speak because they heard from so and so, I was like,
Mhm.
I'm going to start charging now. And,
Yeah.
what I charged 3 years ago is nothing like what I charge now. But
Mhm.
just making sure what you said, don't do it forever. Like you're going to have to transition into charging at some point.
Yeah, yeah. And you may be a new speaker and you find out from the organization they have a budget and they may have a little bit of a stipend that they can give you. Like, don't be afraid to take that, even though it may be lower. But again, remember, like Stephanie was saying, we're here to refine our skills. We're here to make our brand undeniable. That's the sweet spot of speaking that Stephanie was mentioning. She doesn't have to reach out. Like her brand started to be known. So, how are you leveraging your social media? How are you leveraging the places that you show up in? Get on as many podcasts as you can, right? Share your voice. Like, these are all things that are going to be seeding and laying the groundwork for an impactful speaking career in a way that
Would you
makes complete
recommend
sense.
if someone's starting to also build a social media presence?
I know some folks, but they're not in dentistry. I know some folks who have built a brand without social media. But
Hmm.
again, it's industry specific. So I would say for dentistry, yes, unless you've got like that rock star network of people that know you well that are able to also sign checks or put you in the right rooms or state your name in rooms that you would need that. You would probably need that.
Yeah, and I don't, it's like, yes, I am on social media and I've worked to build my platform and it's been great for me, but I know that there's people out there that are speaking or have very successful businesses that do not have a social media presence. So it can be
Exactly.
done, but I
Yes.
think just the way things are going now with social media, it's just going to be more and more valuable. So I don't think it hurts to try to, at least build a little something on there because they leverage each other eventually, and then meeting
Yes.
planners want you to have a following because they want you to promote them on your page and all that. So,
Yeah. You get yourself a LinkedIn. Get yourself a
yeah.
LinkedIn. I would say if you had to choose a platform, I love LinkedIn. I didn't start off with LinkedIn. I was using Facebook. 2015, I was using Facebook.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn is a powerful, powerful tool. But like Stephanie was saying, there are folks that have been able to build their brand. It really is about who you know. Who do you know? Who can
Yeah,
speak
it
your name
is.
in rooms that you're not in? So could you grow without social media? Absolutely, but you need $1 million network. And that means that you've got to be in places where there are decision makers and they get a chance to hear you speak and share your knowledge and your information, or you have someone that's advocating for you. I call them sponsors, where they will state your name and state that, yeah, you definitely should handle that. So some of the people that you see right now in dentistry who are major, you see them everywhere. They had sponsors. They had somebody on their background, right, on their network that is very well connected. Some of my opportunities came because I grew relationships and someone said, "Hey, why don't you try out Jasmine for this or that?" So I'm really, truly grateful for each of those people that have stated my name. So the relationship part, it's so important and is necessary if you're really trying to build something that's sustainable with speaking. If you want to do it here and there, then don't worry about it. But if you really are trying to make a name for yourself that has a lasting impact in the industry, you will need those relationships.
Don't miss out on networking opportunities if you go to events and stuff. And that's something that's tough for me because deep down I'm an introvert and I would rather be in my room watching baking shows, but doing these networking events is really important because those relationships, you never know what's going to happen. Even like
This
a
is
few
true.
years from now, it could come back and really help you out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a threshold, like I'm done. I'm like at a cap and then I disappear.
Oh
So
yeah, I do the
I
Irish exit all the time.
I actually have to prep myself. All right, here we go. Here we go. I
Yeah.
love educating. I love to educate. Give me a mic, I'm ready to go. But when it comes to networking, I'm like, oh gosh, let me make sure
Same.
I ask them how are they. Make sure I ask them how are their kid. Like I have to train myself. I'm like, I'd rather say, what's your deep darkest fear? Like I'd rather start off conversations like that. I like going deep, getting to
Like
know
real
the
deep. Yeah.
individual. Right. I like that part, but yes, networking is difficult. So you have two examples here, y'all, that you're listening to. Myself and Stephanie. You can be introverted and still make an impact.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Jasmine, I feel like I could just talk to you forever about this stuff. I know that you know so much more than what we touched on today, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. Before we end here, if anyone wants to connect with you or reach out to you, what's the best place for that?
They can find me on Instagram. Don't find me on Facebook because I won't accept your friend requests. Find me on Instagram at It's Jasmin Haley or connect on LinkedIn. That's the best way to be connected. There's so many ways in which you can grow your network through that, find opportunities as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm at Jasmin Haley. You can always find me at Beyond the Prophy too. So look up any of that and you'll be able to find me.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I'll link all of that in the show notes just to make it easy for everyone. Any closing thoughts for someone who's thinking about becoming a speaker?
If you know that you were at a place in your life where it was the last day, that was it. This is the last day. You're at the end of your life. If you personally know that you would regret not moving forward with sharing your voice, with sharing your message, any form of regret at all, if you knew that this was the last day of your life, then I would say, what are you waiting for? A lot of us are waiting for things to be perfect. A lot of us are waiting for the right opportunity. There's a reason why this desire has been planted in your heart. I believe in God, and I believe that there are things that are set out for us that are like whispers that let us know like what the next direction should be. So if you know that you're going to regret that, I would say go out there and share it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have everything laid out just right. It's just a matter of you just saying yes. So say yes and get moving.